Get up and get out. Get out. Get out.
I have a question for you.
Say Christ is Lord. Say Christ is Lord. Say it. You say Christ is Lord. Get out. Get out. Christ is Lord.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Offensively Accurate, hosted by yours truly, A-list thugged, aka White Boy D-Voice, aka another racially ambiguous groiper. And we have a lot to get into today. Christ is King, as always. Good to see everybody in here already. Marion Bro, Beatitudes, Orthodox Boomer Grandma. Yep, Padre Pio is not he is not an Orthodox saint. However, we still love Padre Pio. And shout out to Shia LaBeouf, who had a recent kind of back and forth with during Mardi Gras. I didn't cover that at all, but I'm sure some of you probably saw that. Seems like, can a man just live his life? Can a man just have an adventure? We have a lot to look into today and a lot moving forward. But one thing I wanted to say at the beginning, because it seems to be circulating in the space, and that is this kind of idea that everyone's black-pilled, if you will. And so I was having conversations with Esperon on the phone earlier today. I had conversations with Zeb Boykin. And it does seem to be, in the dissident right, there's a lot of people who are black-pilling. And trust me, I get it. I understand the frustrations. I do. I get the feeling of looking forward and wondering, like, so what's next, right? Everybody seems to understand the JQ, but where do you take this from here? Where does the dissident right move and grow and build? And I would say at the very minimum, while I don't have every answer, and I probably never will, the solution cannot be doing what our ancestors did. And what I mean by that is the generations that just very shortly and recently preceded us. Because you got to think about the situation that put you in as an individual, as you grew up, the deracination of your nation, as you experienced it as it was happening. And I think for us, those in the Gen Z movement and the millennials too, kind of are in a bit of a unique position because these things were happening maybe at a fast pace as they were growing up. But I just look at it in the same vein of, if this is as bad as it got from us for a couple generations, not paying attention, not being vigilant, allowing rampant degeneracy to take hold, imagine how much worse it could get for our children if we decide maybe it's too inconvenient to hold these positions. Maybe it's too much of a headache. Maybe it's too, and I think about those things, and for those reasons, I can't give up. I refuse to give up. It won't be easy by any means. I'm not saying that at all. But I think there's some positive and optimism to hold. And I think specifically, if you just look at the conversation in general at large, just think about the work that Tyler Oliveira and Nick Shirley are putting on, and think about where we were 4 years prior to that. And it might not be the most timely, but it is definitely moving in the right direction. And when you see these conversations taking hold, you see the exposure, the red pill going mainstream, the JQ going mainstream, these are still positive developments. Granted, they might not be as timely or as impactful as we'd like them to be, but I do think we have to not lose sight of the ground we have gained, and not take it for a loss, if you will. But a lot to get into. Some of the announcements I go right off the top. True Legend Sexist is back. Just kidding. That's Dark Cell. True Legends Exist is actually the name of his new channel. And I was having some conversation with Dark Cell. He's a friend here of the community. But definitely go check out his new channel. It is True Legends Exist. And he covers cryptids, and he's moved away from the incel stuff. So shout out to Dark Cell for that. And we will be very shortly and very quickly, I say shortly, but here soon, we will be introducing at this point, it'll be our third sponsor we've had on the show. But we'll be the only sponsor outside, I guess, tangentially, the Antelope Hill. And that is going to be Athenor Metallurgy. I hope I'm saying that right. I should get clarification next time I'm talking to Christian or Machine Head, if you guys know him in the Discord. But I want to say I'm extremely appreciative of that. And an extension of that too is I'm extremely appreciative of all of the support that I've gotten from you guys, as well as those who've donated on Buy Me a Coffee. All of that, I can't articulate how much I appreciate that greatly. But it's a metallurgy, so not meth. No, not meth. It'll be metalworking, light boxes, and a few other things in there. But I don't want to give too much of the game away. We'll get there when we get there. But shout out to them. But for today, we're going to be covering Nick Shirley. Craziness happening. And I apologize. I'm not in the best get up either. I'm very sorry about that. I just had a short time to prepare. But I'm just going to rattle off a few of the topics. Nick Shirley and Tyler Oliveira obviously making the biggest headwaves. They were the talk of the town, if you will. And it was hilarious because Nick Shirley, I think, was the reason why I think a lot of this was set into motion. And so what I mean by that, if anybody watched the video, I'm sure many of you did, Tyler had already covered Nerlus UL, or Curlus UL, however you say it, right? I don't speak Yiddish. And there wasn't that much of a pushback there. Now, there was inside of a bit more of the Orthodox Jewish communities. He has a few of these sit-downs that he was going back and forth with. But it wasn't like the mainstream level pushback, right? Like it wasn't getting Seth Dillon quotes. We weren't getting Laura Loomer quote tweets. It wasn't seemingly until, and he had even posted the secondary one, but it wasn't until Nick Shirley said something that all of a sudden now everyone came out about it. And that to me is a little bit of the linchpin here in the situation. So what I mean by that to say is, for whatever reason, Tyler Oliveira was able to make these videos and push them out, and he wasn't really seen. Or I think their strategy there was, as long as we ignore and don't have an overreaction, it'll contain kind of like how mainstream these kind of videos are going. But when Nick Shirley said expose it all, the entire system convoluted. Next thing you know, we have Jews from Israel calling in, and they're saying like, man, this Nick Shirley guy's anti-Semitic. It's kind of crazy. But the reason why I think that they got irritated by that is very specifically because I think Nick Shirley, in a very loose sense, in the recent events, is someone they've been trying to groom remotely. And what I mean by that is, I don't think in any sense of like anyone's approaching him. You know, he's not in the Hamptons having meetings. I don't think it's any of that. But I'm looking at it from the lens of Charlie Kirk. And when you look at it from the lens of Charlie Kirk, obviously there was definitely a trail there, right? There's a trail of like the donors, the conversations. They clearly were in his ear. They were much more hands-on with Charlie, which is what's giving so much room for Candace Owens to continue these investigations. And Erica Kirk's a whole other story. But it's in that I do think that there was an expectation that when he was going on Patrick Bet David and being brought on these other shows, directly after he drops the video in Minnesota, that when he posts that, it's kind of counteracting all of the remote grooming they were doing. And that's kind of the vibes that I was getting from, just seeing these kind of overreactions there. Because it didn't make any sense to me that no one had came after Tyler Oliveira. It would have made more sense had they went after him for the Nerlus Yule video, but they didn't. It wasn't until Nick Shirley had kind of joined up. And that to me, I think is indicative that there's something very inorganic about the nature of the way that they reacted. But beyond there, huge positive development, if you guys saw this at all, the evidence was revealed for an earthquake during Jesus's crucifixion, or I should say, reports are now pointing to that there was evidence, and it's a lot of evidence, for the earthquake that did occur during Jesus's crucifixion. I thought that was pretty cool. That's from Daily Mail. I didn't get to look into it too deeply, but seeing that as like a breaking news headline is always pretty cool. And we're going to be taking a look at a crazy segment from Alex Jones and John Kirikow. For any of you who didn't watch the circuit episode with me and Zeb Boykin on, it's been a long week, whenever that was, you probably got at least a bit into who Kirikow is, right? His background of a CIA operative, where he even came from. Why did he whistleblow? Where did this originate from? And he said some very intriguing things to Alex Jones on one of the recent segments, and we're going to watch that because it's all to do with Iran. And then additionally to that, they weren't the only people who were pushing things about Iran. Tucker Carlson also had a few things that he dropped with Iran, namely, this is going to take the cake, I think, for the day. Tucker Carlson's pushing this idea that, and we've kind of been seeing some of these signs here, that Israel does want to decouple from the United States of America. But what we're seeing from that is that what Tucker's saying from that is they're decoupling from the United States because the way they're viewing it in the future, there's nothing they can do to gain that kind of sentiment, this pro-Israel alliance back. So he's pushing that they're prepared to latch to India. And so we'll take a look at some of these claims coming from Tucker Carlson. Pretty crazy segment there as well. JD Vance is also under fire for his comments being made both about the Iran war and as well as his comments about the Tucker and Huckabee interview, which is curious because his Huckabee and Tucker interview, or the comments he made about the Tucker and Huckabee interview, he said it was, quote, good for the right. And he thinks it was something that should have been happening. It's a good development for the right, essentially. But also on the other hand, he made comments about the pending Iranian strike, referencing back to the Forever Wars. And the comment basically, I'm paraphrasing here, it was something to the effect of, well, I don't think anytime we're making strategic decisions, military decisions, we should always look back at, the failures of those as if they are, that's like kind of like the set history of, which is kind of curious because on one hand, he's agreeing with Tucker and is like pro opening the conversations on the JQ and Huckabee in pre-mill dispensationalism. But on the other hand, he's like actively saying like, no, let's not remember the Forever Wars as we approach Iran. It's kind of wild. Somebody said something about no one who's a Fed in here. Pizzles and Noon says, what is the best way for an influencer to prove they're not a Fed? It's getting harder and harder these days, and it's sad to see our guys taking insult to this question given the climate. Well, so here's the thing. I think it goes both ways. It goes both ways in the sense that I understand that the dissident right specifically, and just the right in general, has been browbeaten into this idea that there is a strong surveillance element to both the FBI and the CIA in their infiltration. And I think the example that sticks out the most to that is everybody will remember the Gretchen Whitmer story from Michigan. But I think the purpose it's serving now for the way that most people are interacting with this idea of like, he's a Fed, is not in the lens that I think people are actively making qualified, analysis of if they're a Fed or not. I think more so it's basically like, if this person doesn't agree with me, they're a federal agent. And I think that's what's actually working against us. And I think more so you see this very prime with Nick Fuentes. I think you can see this a bit more with other elements too. And especially when it's on some of these smaller guys too. I think that's even harder sell. Granted, I do think there are small creators who are potentially federal agents or have some kind of attachment to being an asset, etc. But I do think the levels of which it's reaching is giving more cause for more of this infighting. It's kind of a negative feedback loop. It's like, I don't agree with you. Well, you're a federal agent. And, for me, it's just like, I don't know. Like if I was a Fed, you would think like they'd give me like better equipment and stuff. And hopefully the sound is sounding good for you guys. That was another big thing. On Thursday, was it Thursday? What day is today? Today's Saturday? No, today's Friday. Is it Thursday? No, Wednesday. On Wednesday, my whole setup crashed, and I had to rebuild the compression chain from the start. And so that was a little difficult to do because it's been a long time since I've actually started with some of the basics. But I used a few different features. I found out actually that the OBS in the native noise gators for OBS are actually pretty bad. So I did get a different noise gate from Regate, I believe. Something to that effect. So hopefully it sounds less bassy. I know some people were irritated about that. So hopefully it sounds less bassy. It's a lot more natural. And I had to do some learning to figure out like a parabolic, the difference between like a parabolic equalizer, like how to use a high pass filter, like all these things that like I really like haven't messed with. I try to keep it simple. But hopefully it sounds good because I spent time on it and it was pissing me off. Good. Your voice box is federal equipment. I'm pretty sure that's good. That's good. Maybe that is a tell, right? They cloned me in a lab and they took a little bit of Barry White and they said, give it to him. It's funny. Well, we do have that crazy segment, JD Vance, Paramount, Netflix, and the Warner Bros. That's a whole other, right? The Paramount and Netflix and Warner Bros. Kind of back and forth on this deal has been something we've been covering and we've basically been, watching from the lens of, what's it called? From Nick Fuentes' takes, I think he's the one that probably articulates it the best. And we got the ball finally dropped. And that is the fact that Netflix has put out a statement. They've declined to raise their offer or to match what Paramount has put out. Paramount did put out a superior offer. But the real kind of story here is the fact that Paramount owns everything. Then the Jews own everything. This is kind of like, this is the story here, which is, it's a combination of, if you combine the Ellisons, right, both father and son between Larry and David, they own a lot of media now. And it's rather unfortunate because the reason I felt like this was going to happen no matter what was because, well, I was hopeful in the beginning, but looking back, I think there's a bit of reason to hesitate. But Netflix, in its opening offer and in I think its final bid that was accepted by Warner Bros., one of the clauses inside of it was very specifically that if anything were to happen to their deal, or if Warner Bros. Were to do anything to step out of the initial agreement, then Netflix would get a guaranteed $2.8 billion. And that's even like if they wanted to renegotiate, they'd get $3 billion just to renegotiate. So the way it's taking form is Netflix is basically being paid to walk away. That's part of the clause. And so that's what's occurring. And the reason why it's terrifying is because this is a lot of media now under ownership. And off of that, let me make this a secondary point, because I think it's probably the best point to be made about the John Kierkegaard situation, which is, again, John Kierkegaard, and who knows how you even pronounce it, is this CIA agent who's been ubiquitous. He's been literally everywhere. TikTok, with all the voice edits as well, too. TikTok mainly, but he's also on X, seeing these all come out. But the point I really wanted to make during the circuit, and I'll make again here, is that he started becoming ubiquitous with all these edits almost like the day after the Ellisons took hold of TikTok. But what is John Kierkegaard mostly going viral for? Well, what is he talking about? He's talking about Mossad in Israel. He's talking about the differences of opinion between CIA agents and Israeli, talking about how the CIA agents had a negative viewpoint of Mossad, which I literally don't believe for 1 second. But all these other people were being deleted. You know, the watermelon emoji might even still be not allowed, right? If you can't even look up certain search terms. But John Kierkegaard was allowed to go full send on Mossad, and he's storytelling all of these inside stories of, you know, when he was doing his 14 years as a CIA operative, and the way that they would kind of come to you in a room and they would do like to me, it's like, you got to miss me with that. And I think that John Kierkegaard's a great storyteller. I think there's a reason why people watch him and they enjoy his content. But if you were asking me, I think John Kierkegaard is by definition containment. And I think very specifically just with that one staunch fact, it's the fact that they essentially eliminated, what's the word? They eliminated, there's a couple creators I'm trying to think of, but I can't remember. But they basically wiped a lot of people out, while also reverting a bunch of search terms. I think, you know, even like saying like anti-Zionist was going, I mean, to me, is a huge stretch. But even being an anti-Zionist or quote unquote putting that in your video would get you banned or limited. But John Kierkegaard is literally giving full stories of how the CIA was like, they were backing off of Mossad and they were like really holding it down. It's like, okay, man. Your mom, because I love that I can't hear your saliva slapping like Candace and Asmongold. Not sure why, but it's blood boiling. Yeah, well, there's certain frequencies. There's certain frequencies. I was learning about this actually, and also shout out to Dunder Whiffen if he's in chat. He was also doing a really good job helping me out with like the 7,000. And you have to just learn, because every voice is different, every voice is unique, and there's also an element of like certain sizes of rooms will also reflect and resonate different frequencies. There's like literally an app that you can download for free that's like, it'll let you know, like you can put the dimensions of your room, like the height, the width, the length, and it'll tell you, expect these frequencies to be the ones that resonate too much. So maybe you want to pull these down. There's so much of a science to it that I'm like, you know, for me being a retard, it's just like, you take it one step at a time and figure it out. I'm glad. Your favorite Albanian ASU show? No, don't say the ASU. Don't start tying me to the frat leader, because he had a terrible moment. I don't know if I put it in here. I hopefully I did. We're gonna react to that too. I'm just gonna get some of the bigger stuff out of the way. But there was a crazy clip of him, like his friend who looks very gay, mind you, twirling his hair. So, like whatever that may be. It's just so weird. I think Nick talked about it too. I feel bad too. I'm like, I've not been watching any Nick, so I've been doing a lot more on the back end. I need to watch more Nick. I watched like 10 minutes of him on my drive to the gym, and that was basically it. But Tucker Carlson's out pouch is also on fire, so we're going to talk about Tucker Carlson a little bit there as well. And who's leading the charge? Well, Laura Loomer. Loomer Unleashed. And what is she doing? She is essentially calling in to, you know, can someone put me in contact with Zen's legal team? Because obviously she's going to jump on it and attack Tucker for it. But supposedly the report is that Tucker Carlson's out pouch is under fire for having some FDA violations. I'm here to tell you right now, I do not care. But you know, it's a story, I guess. James Fishback, however, did confirm he does watch America First. I thought that was pretty awesome. And it was funny was it was a guy who came up to him with a GIA hat. And for those who might not be familiar, this is one of the newer pieces of merchandise that comes from Nick Fuentes. And it's meant to be Kuiper Intelligence Agency, right? Like the CIA, but the GIA. And quite funny is directly after this is when we got the Epstein batch release, which was, you know, Goyim in abundance. And I'm sure you've heard me say that multiple times, probably seen it all over the internet. But Goyim in abundance acronym is also GIA as well. And so when Fishback is handed the hat, he goes, you know, there's two ways you can take this. He's like, but I think I like Goyim in abundance better. I thought that was pretty cool. And also, it's curious to see one of the fans of Nick as well here too. The guy who's getting his hat signed, he does not look like your typical Nick Fuentes fan. Beyond that, though, economically, we are in a pretty rough spot. Economically, all signs are pointing to us being in a bubble. You know, here's the black pill. Everybody get ready. Everybody get your water ready. Here's the black pill. And it's pretty rough. And so, for one, people can't sell their homes. But not only can people not sell their homes, they also can't pay their mortgages. And there's a account on X going massively viral for putting these great graphics together. But the U.S. is, and here's some other details here, the U.S. now has 44% more home sellers than buyers, which is one of the largest gaps in history. And per Yahoo in remarks, Americans are defaulting on debt at a crisis level pace. And so many times before, this is kind of the bubble here. And one thing that's hilarious is, and this is cracking me up, there's supposedly a new form of this AGI that's come out, one of these newer ones, at least it's new to me. And it goes by the name of OpenClaw. It's one of the first things we're actually going to take a look at today. And you just had to take a look at this. This was cracking me up for so long. And so, mind you, the housing market is in such a terrible place. People are panicking because for a lot of individuals, they've wrapped up so much of their assets and money is into this home. And so for every day it sits on the market that doesn't get sold, it's a lot of percentage of money that basically disappears. Here's what they said. I have OpenClaw sending lowball offers on Zillow all day just to make boomers start panicking. And if you read this down here, he's communicating with the AI. So what he's doing here in the instructions is he's contacting Zillow listings in the Tampa, Florida area for anything that's a 3 to 5 bedroom house that has been on the market for longer than 30 days. So it's not selling. So it's been on the market for about a month. It's not sold. Right there, it contacted 372 listings. And the average offer it gave was 70% below asking. So think about the people who are getting these, who are, trying to sell their home in the Tampa area. They're probably a bit older, for more than likely they are older. And someone reaches out to you, and on the market, you're selling your home for for $200,000. And instead, the offer you get back is for $80K. Dude, people are probably freaking out. And I thought that was hilarious. And it even says there, 0 positive responses. There was a lot of negative responses. And then also a lot of people didn't even respond. And it was funny because this is kind of becoming a bit of a meme in and of itself. So a guy quote tweeted this. And then he said quite prettily the opposite. He said, I'm going to make a competing bot that sends highball offers and then backs out for trivial reasons. So, the country's burning. The housing bubble is on the verge of collapsing. And on top of everything, we are about to, all signs are pointing to the fact that the AI bubble is here as well. And I'm kind of looking at this. Are we about to get the housing bubble and the AI crisis happening literally simultaneously at the same time? I really hope not. But all signs are pointing to that being a strong reality. And the reason why I'm a little fearful of this is because there have been a lot of layoffs that have come out. And from people from Square and things like the Cash App as well. I believe the YouTube CEO had even come out and said, he said something to the effect of, this will be the last year that people in the workforce do meaningful work. And it's, in addition to that, it's Amazon, it's UPS, it's all these places that are basically laying off, 10,000 people here, 12,000 people here, 7,000 people here. Some of these smaller companies, but they add up, right? A bunch of small companies laying off about 50 to 100 to 1,000 people in some cases. Well, granted, that's not even really a small company if you're firing 1,000 people at once, but still small in comparison to these big ones. And it's putting in a very fearful element into a lot of individuals. And so I've been paying attention to the crypto market as well. That's been fluctuating a lot. And I do agree with Tix right here as well. I want to give you guys hope. I do. We also got to be realistic. And Tix is saying that the AI bubble will make the .com bubble look like Fisher Price. And so the crazy thing with this is, you guys remember Andrew Yang, right? Am I going to get attacked for this? You guys remember Andrew Yang? Andrew Yang was ahead of his time. He quite literally was. And the idea that I'm going to talk about is this idea of UBI. And I don't mean it in the sense that we need to adopt UBI. I mean it in the sense that he was right to begin figuring out, we need to figure out what the solutions will be if we start to have a rapidly dwindling workforce. Because if you think about how bad things are when we waver between things like 7 to 13% unemployment, and 13% unemployment, it's like the world's falling down. Well, what happens if AI, an entire sector no one's ready for, all of a sudden now it's like an added 2% unemployment, and then 2 months later down there's another kind of development, and now it's like boom, here's another 3% unemployment. So there is some fear to be had there. However. And maybe this is the lie. Maybe that's the lie, and this is the truth. Maybe this is the lie, and the former is the truth. But there's also another competing article that I've seen getting floated around, coming from people, however, I wouldn't say I particularly trust, that are saying that they're using this to AI wash. And in the loosest terms, AI wash, meaning that these layoffs are typical layoffs, but every company is using the AI as an easy kind of throwaway. Because people, for whatever reason, seemingly are less mad when an AI replaces you compared to just like being fired straight up, I guess. So is there an element of a lot of this is just every company saying, oh yeah, oh yes, we are also fired everyone for AI too. And it's like, maybe it could just be something like they made mistakes, or like they had problems going on. So who knows with that? But the AI bubble is here, and it does look like we need to actually start tangling with this. And I think for a lot of reasons, even outside of the UBI equation, because you think about it in the same sense of too, like, say you had a position where the majority of the things being bought or things being made are being made by AI. Well, therein, the AI that's making the shampoo bottle, the AI would never need to use the shampoo bottle. So the thing making the product doesn't even need to use it, and also there's no mechanism of which it needs to have money or spend money, because it doesn't operate in the same plane essentially as humans do in terms of survival and having like needs. And obviously the AI needs like electricity, they'd be a bit different. So then you think about it. So then it's like, so if we're going to dwindle out the ability for consumers to pay for things, i.e. less available work, will that not also stand to reason that then if there's less money being brought in by individuals, will that not just decrease the amount of money that could be spent in general? So does that not make a cyclical problem of like those who own the businesses who are using the AI to replace all their workers, are they not bringing about their own destruction? Because how are people then going to have money to pay for things without some kind of injection of UBI? Or does it take a bit more nefarious route and the money kind of follows a more disparate path where the rich get exceptionally richer and the poor get exceptionally poor? And maybe you see a lot more of a kind of a black market, dark market kind of economy coming out. Maybe you do see prostitution reach, extreme degrees. Maybe this is the path that it's going, which is that people will have to do a lot more like kind of depraved gesture type things to make ends meet or just suffer. And maybe this will bring about, maybe this is the answer of hypergamy. Maybe this is the black pill going forward. And I'm not trying to black pill you guys, but I'm just thinking it hypothetically. Because what would you do? I mean, what would all these individuals do if all the females do if basically 70% of men could not be able to provide you a stable life? Would that not bring about polygamy? Would you not, all the guys who own the AI systems, they not like be dating like 12 women at once? Because I mean, the woman would be making the decisions in their own best interest. So it's just some things to think about. And I think there's a lot of reason to hesitate, and always kind of think like, am I even being told the truth? And it's curious. And one thing to note too is it seems to be contested. So don't hold it as like the AI is for sure coming. Everyone should be freaking out. Because at the same time, there's a lot of other kind of injections you're getting as well, that it's not as advanced as people think it is, that there's not enough people who are familiar with prompts, and also that companies are just straight up lying so they can get by with laying off people and not being attacked for it. So some things to think about there. I also did see one with this OpenClaw segment as well that was specifically about this OpenClaw lowballing people on Facebook Marketplace, but that was like a cool idea. So this guy said that he set up his OpenClaw to lowball people on the marketplace, and he says so far I got him an $80 PS5, a $1,500 Jeep Wrangler, a free mower, 3 free TVs, and some Pokemon cards and some Lego stuff. But that would be like, if I was to use ATI, like that would be how I would use it. I would use it like just like that to get like to max min. But if everybody's doing that, you're brought right back to the same playing field. And the shaved his head so he can't twirl his hair. Yeah, right. I know. I always shave my head. I shave it like once a week, essentially. Sometimes more than that. Depends on how gross I feel. Sometimes if I feel gross, because, I never shower. No, I'm just kidding. Sometimes I just feel gross. I'm like, nah, it's got to go. Eat it and delete it. Okay. Enough about the economy. Let's actually get into it. We're going to go right back to the top with Tyler Oliveira and Nick Shirley, and we'll move on from there. So let's get started.
Cut straight through, offensively accurate, that's the view.
So as depicted in the thumbnail, let me get rid of one of these chats here. Tyler Oliveira and Nick Shirley are the chaos causers of the day. And I think one of the most notable things that I got and I enjoyed thoroughly about this was how just ready to go Tyler Oliveira was for all of this. And I think that's kind of like one of the big mistakes for a lot of these individuals who, maybe push a bit of the red pill or JQ or anything even, could be considered something like that. It seems to me that a lot of them come unprepared or rather quickly ushered back into the corner they just came from, being smacked down, being called anti-Semitic, you just hate Jews. And everyone's like, whoa, no. And so you see the difference of response, right, between Nick Shirley and Tyler Oliveira, and still, shout out to Nick. But when Laura goes at him, he's writing this full response. He's like, when you do this, you do this. And then Tyler Oliveira's like, shut up, bitch. And people are like, woo, they're like cheering for him. And, and it's hilarious because, Tyler Oliveira, like nothing about his videos even gives you that kind of like that he would be speaking like this. But I think he's beginning to show a bit more of his power levels. Now, again, I'm not ultimately too familiar with who he is, but like I've always said, whether it's Candace Owens or otherwise, you push for people when they are saying and doing the right things, right? This is like the positive reinforcement for the things they're doing that are good, that you like. And just insane. But one of these news stories here that I'll pull up for you is good news and bad news from Wayne Waldrop. He says the good news, the cancellation has backfired. Tyler Oliveira has never been searched more on Google. The bad news, Tyler Oliveira has never been searched more in Israel, hitting a peak 100 on search volume, which is very funny. But if you just go to Tyler Oliveira's page, which would be the best way to just show this, is he's just ratioing people like crazy. And, and one of those things in there too is like, bro, can we just take a second to just talk about how insane it is that there's people who make 8-hour videos, like review videos. And on top of that, like I would sometimes I would sit through like something long form like that, but not too often. But on top of it, it was an 8-hour review video on the kid show Victorious on Nickelodeon. You're just like, dude, you're just like, I know what you like, like cringe, man. Take it away from me. But that's one of the individuals that he did end up ratioing. And, you just go to his page, man. Tyler Oliveira's over here like balling out, dude. I like Shirley, but he's just not nearly as good as the social media game. But he's just going crazy on all these, doing some of these snippets here, clipping from the full documentary here. Looks like he's not tweeted much since yesterday, actually. He's probably working. But, making fun of the Smalley Lear Center. This is one of the clips I played in the video yesterday. But we'll just go to some of what he's saying here. So this is from yesterday, probably amidst the media storm. 67,000 likes. Let's give him another. He says, they call you an American patriot if you criticize black and brown welfare abuse and fraud. they call you an anti-Semite if you examine the Jewish community with the same critical eye. American taxpayers are the slaves funding ethnic enclaves across America. It's time to wake up. And amen. And good for him. And good for him not backing down. Good for him not playing the game. Dude, like he was balling, dude. Like, look at this. I ain't even Jewish, and they took my foreskin. You don't care, dude. Uncancelable. And at a certain point, you do become uncancelable. And you know, and he started his own website since he did get banned off of Patreon. But I do want to pay attention to this because I had actually finished scripting the majority of what I wanted to cover in the video before I had seen this drop. So I wanted to spend time like watching what this was on stream the next day. But he says, you know, Jewish rabbi literally cursed me, bro. You can't make this S up. But I did put this little photo at the end. Yeah, if I drew this guy and tried posting it, it would be anti-Semitic. But it's an 8-minute video. The title is "The Rabbi Will Ask God Almighty to Curse Tyler Oliveira." Or I guess I should say the thumbnail says that. Yeah, anti-termite. I will say, dude, we need Prosopa insights in here, dog. Oh, let me say that. Hold on. Let me say that too. Let me back up a second, dude. I don't know if Prosopa was dropping some shade. No, I know he wasn't. She was being nice. We love Prosopa insights here. I haven't talked to him in a minute. I need to talk to him again. And he commented on the latest video, and he has a great video. I was like, thank you, man. I appreciate it. But you know what he says at the end? Looking skinny. Me? You talking to me? I was like, bro, I've gotten this comment like religiously for the last like 2 weeks, man. And dude, somebody was like, he's probably on drugs. Bro, come on. I wish I was. But no, joke. No, no. But it's just my face, dude. I started shaving my beard differently. And so I guess this kind of plays into the physiognomy, right? I will not let the beard grow any longer here, right? No more. Only the chin. Clip to get out, dude. That's funny. Orthodox Boomer says, she says, am I the only woman on here? You might be, actually. I tend to scare the hoes. I tend to scare the hoes around these parts, dude. I do what Zeb will not. I made so many comments on his member stream about women, and I think he ignored all of them. I get it though. I did thin out, but I feel like I thinned out like 3 months ago. You know, maybe I don't know. Maybe I am on drugs. Maybe I am on meth. Maybe I am. Maybe I injected it in my face with a peptide up here. Maybe I did. But anyways, okay, enough about me. The Jewish rabbi, what did he have to say? How did he curse him? How many chickens were thrown around his head? And let's just take a listen.
This is a Jewish prayer book. It's predominantly used for asking God for assistance, for blessing people, and for only asking for open and revealed goodness. But now it needs to be used to stop the forces of evil from coming after the Jewish people without reason and without basis. I will make the following prayer in English. May God Almighty, who blessed our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Moses and Aaron, David and Solomon, stop, prevent, and subdue the evil Tyler, son of Thomas, and may he have no success in targeting, hurting, or negatively, or attempting to bring negativity to the lives of Jewish people. May he have no blessing and no success in any mission against the Jewish people, and may God Almighty cause him to return to his true abilities and do good in the world. It's over for you, Tyler. Tyler Oliveira, it's over. You've crossed the line. The Jewish people's connection to God Almighty is forever. There are 5 levels of the Jewish soul: the Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yechida. And as it is explained in the Torah, there is literally a part of God within every Jew, for which anyone who targets the Jewish people, it will be God Almighty himself that comes after them and prevents them.
Well, and then I'm like getting anxious. I'm like, what's the music? I'm like waiting for something to go on. Ricardo says, I'm just noticing Atlas's beard. What is under the baseball cap? All right, mods, ban him. Just ban him. No, I'm just messing. Don't do that. He's cool. Atlas Drug does slap, and I couldn't, dude. Atlas Drug, let me go click on the channel. Christ is King. Dude, I'm gonna start getting attacked the way Nick gets attacked. You are not doing it the right way. I should already probably be getting attacked for that. I try my best, I guess. You know what? But this is insane, and his voice doesn't match at all, literally at all, with the way that he looks. You know, But maybe that's the beard doing the work for him. I guess when I see a beard, I expect like a bit more of a male voice, I guess you will. But let's keep going. I'm probably going to get copyrighted for the music in this, unfortunately, but you know.
From being successful. May the world only see goodness and kindness. And those who are doing wrong, may they correct their ways. And those who seek to bring justice and peace to the world by reporting those who are doing wrong is one thing. But those who seek to defame, to demoralize, and to disrupt people who are going about their lives in an effort to serve God and be productive members in society as they fulfill their religious and social obligations. As it is known, many and most of the Jewish people are non-violent, law-abiding citizens that bring goodness to the world. Tyler Oliveira, may you have no success in any mission against any group of people that is based on falseness, and may you have no success in trying to harm the Jewish.
Okay, that's enough of that. You know, and again, you know, law-abiding citizens, they're all saying the same rhetoric. They're all coming out about it with the same thing. There's not really fraud there. It's not really fraud. And it's a big joke because you could make the nuanced argument, but it would be pointless to do so because the argument there that what he's exposing here is the fact that there is rampant abuse of the welfare state. And what is hilarious is in one of these individuals that's pushing back on Tyler Oliveira in these different in these different kind of snippets have been coming out, and I forget who he did the interview with. But the guy basically argues that, well, if the law says it and we meet the criteria for it, well, who cares? And so there's no morality there. There's no, I mean, because this is the argument I made in the video, which is that it's circular. Then if your morality is whatever the law dictates, well, if the law gets changed, then your morality has now changed. So all it would require for you to do something differently would be if some other person in power changed what the law was or removed the conditions or changed the criteria. So like, what really is your position there, right? Like whatever the law is, I'm just a lawful person. Well, if the law said to, you know, jump 1,000 times in the morning every morning, you know, are we going to start arresting, cripples? Like, no, it's just like, again, that's a kind of a crazy example, but it's retarded. It's like circular logic here. And this guy's, you know, picking up on the same rhetoric here. But I did enjoy the way that he kind of framed it with the Amish. That's one that I added in the video, forgive me. And it's in there that Tyler's comparing how the Amish also have all of these big families. They also are self-sufficient peoples, but they're not getting grants and money and finances and being paid to the tune of thousands and thousands of dollars by the government simply for existing or simply for qualifying under being like a minority group that wants to have kids, and now you get money from the government. It's like that. It shouldn't be working like that at all. I do think there should be family credits, mind you, but I think that if we're going to do the family credits for pursuing larger families, it's need to be across the board, and the criteria needs to be that you're married and you have children, right? Like it shouldn't be this like you need to have some kind of DEI attachment. Like I'm a Somalian, give me the credit. I'm a Jew, give me the credit. I'm black, give me the credit. It's like no, either everybody gets it or nobody gets it. And it's kind of insane because one of the things that we're talking about in the realities of what we're trying to compete against is this idea that we're being outbred. You know, this is part of the pro-white push, which is, you know, as much as it would matter, you know, to get us in a better position, you know, just in generally, like ideologically, there's also the physical reality that we are literally being outbred. Now, I don't have the numbers ahead of me or in front of me right now, but I'm pretty sure if you just two groups, you go whites and non-whites. Whites are at like a 1.4 to like 1.6 replacement rate, or birthing rate, I should say. And whereas the nons are like anywhere from like 3 to 3.3. So it's almost like double. And this is like more the argument that Nick lays out in terms of the globalization effect, because this is not just happening. It's not just happening in America either. This is like a global phenomenon occurring, and it's a part of the global agenda. The white replacement is not just to replace the whites in America. Clearly that's happening in Australia and in the United Kingdom, or in Europe at large, I should say. And you know, it's a harsh reality because it is one that we have to start combating like immediately. But that also requires on a short scale, you know, men to put themselves in position to be stable, to be able to have and birth multiple children. And part of the reason why this is relevant with the Jewish communities and the Somalian communities and so on is imagine how easier it would be for you to have children and have multitudes of children, if the government was giving you, I don't know, $2,000 to $3,000 a month just because like you're Jewish, well, would you not be incentivized to have more children? I'm sure some of you would probably use it and, and end up spending it all on PS5, FIFA cards and and Madden microtransactions. Yeah, I might have done that once or twice, but I'm just kidding. But that's kind of the point. This is kind of like these underlying tensions here, which is I think a lot of white individuals, I think especially for me and younger individuals too, you think about these things that you want. You want to be able to have multiple children. You want to be able to have a wife and a home and all of these things, but it's so restrictive and you feel like you're so essentially kept out of the market, or the market's so far away from you. Or if you do begin to attempt to climb towards these things, you look at the scale and the time and you're like, bro, I'm going to be 53 before I can, feel stable or in a position where I could have multiple kids and not be stressed out financially. And then you turn around and everyone in Columbus, well, Somaliland or whatever it is, next thing you know, they're popping them out left and right. They're not even taking care of them. And it just like at the base level of that, like I think that pisses people off. Like it pisses me off, because I want to be able to have more kids, but I am restricted to the element of like you want to be responsible about things. You don't want to make it insane or chaotic or do something where you would be in a poor position or compromised. And to just travel around Columbus to in whatever gas station you walk into, there's like 30 black kids and one black woman, no father in sight. And then you see the Somalian stuff being exposed by Nick Shirley. Then you see the Jewish stuff being exposed by Tyler Oliveira. And it doesn't stop there. It's more. And they've been going to different cities, right? It was happening in Minnesota, Minneapolis. It's happening in Columbus. They were getting reports that this was happening in Baltimore. There was reports happening in Wyoming. We had a whole era where like shortly after Nick Shirley's video drops, it's post after post after post of like, wow, did you know that there's 718 daycares in this 2-mile square radius? No, I didn't. Wow, crazy. And then at the same point, you're kind of looking at this going, who the hell is in charge? How are there 508 trucking companies that are all packed in like these 3 buildings right next to each other? How does that make sense? But yet you get bitch slapped to the moon if you like have the most minor violation of some stupid regulation. You got to get the notary in, you got to get the appraiser in, you got to get this guy and that guy. And then you watch the Somalians, they're cooking a fire, having a bonfire like they're back in Africa. And you go, what are the rules here? And that's kind of the point. There's different rules for different people. And we're tired of it. And quite frankly, we're tired of it being so inverse and so unequal. And even if it was equal, it still wouldn't be correct because some of these individuals and the way they behave cannot and does not assimilate with the Western world. Hence, neither need to be removed, deported, or otherwise forced to assimilate. Those are basically the options. And I would never want to say I would want to force someone to assimilate, so like, leave. It's kind of where we are. But prompts to Tyler Oliveira, I would say this is something to probably pay attention to in the future. See if Shirley is maybe egged into a position where he feels like he does need to apologize. I really hope that he is going to maintain, strength and like not back down, not bend the knee. But even after the video and even after the events yesterday, I think there are still some people who do feel like he is an asset of some kind, that he's still inorganic. And I'm not saying I know one way or the other. I would say the current signs point to him being more organic, but don't take it as the truth. But there is elements about him that you do kind of feel sideways about. I think one of them being the pro and poly market element, being basically sponsored for them directly after, he dropped the video. But also the fact that he seemingly has a bit more of this mainstream GOP, traditional Republican kind of fundamentalist viewpoint. And that's what we're trying to break, right? We're trying to get rid of that. We're trying to move away from, because understand too, here is Christian, he's a Christian nationalist, and I would imagine many of you in the same way view this, even if you're not a Christian nationalist, you need to go home. Anyways, but the way a lot of Christian nationalists in the space, they look at the Constitution and the way the founding fathers, the adjudications that came about that, early Supreme Court rulings, the way things were signed into law, the way the legislature, and they view that as almost as a subversion or as a flaw or as mistakes. And so these are kind of the tensions that arrive here too, which is you have fundamentalists who will point to the Constitution as this infallible document, but you have many in the Christian right in the space saying that it is a failed document. And so these are some of the more the tensions that exist in the right wing at more of the base level, where I do see that Nick Shirley, forgive me, Nick Shirley is a lot closer to the fundamentalist than I think where the Christian nationalist is. And we want to be able to pull him, to that side and be able to make the arguments of why we do believe that both in, not just in its writing were some things incorrect, but it's the way that it has been interpreted is the way that it's been incorrect. And I think very specifically, I think that is the courts, the regional courts, the Supreme Court, that I do think is one of the elements that will have to be reworked in this kind of like, in this reformed America, if you will, this kind of, changing it. My beliefs one way or another, but I like this team the most. It's funny. Yeah. This is my team for life now at this point. No going back. I'm tired, chat. We were just talking about you earlier at the beginning. Zeb, what's up, brother? He might have been here the whole time. Zeb's my handy dandy federal agent who watches me. No, I'm just messing, man. Got to give Zeb Boykin some, we had a good time at his members only stream last night. If you didn't catch it, if you don't have membership to Zeb Boykin's channel, you definitely should. You get some of the best comedy from Zeb at late night. Past midnight, you get the comedy coming out of Zeb Boykin. And we did decide accelerationism won. We have decided we're winning. We're working on we're moving along, if you will. But I'm kind of talking a lot, aren't I? I'm not really getting much said here. Let's make sure we cover something that's meaningful. I have a lot on here. Okay, well, this is what I want to go to next. This is a big point, I think. And well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, man. Thank you very much for the super chat from Mr. Zeb Boykin. And yes, and the same to you, man. Same to you. We are a team. The New America vision is a dissident right that can overtake the country, shape it into the Christian worldview the founding fathers actually had. And the answer is, and the solution is, a coalition that can have a racially ambiguous griper like me and a Confederate Southerner like Zeb Boykin. And we can beat the Jews and decouple from Israel and excise all this disgusting degeneracy out of this nation. And we will win. Also with that, it's not a joke at all either. Pray for Zeb as well. Because the black pill is strong. You guys know it's strong. I know it's strong. We got to make sure that we maintain we want to maintain as much as possible our optimism moving forward and not fall into the pit traps of the, feeling like it's over, if you will. But shout out to Zeb. Appreciate you very much, man. I think I'm losing my voice. LRX, you're always late. LRX, you're always late. Always. No, it's fine. That's fine. We'll let it slide this time. Just kidding. I can see that some of you are late because I can just tell by what you're responding to in the chat sometimes. Like Smelly, my uncle's a cripple, please lock him up. I think Smelly might be like 10, 15 minutes behind. That's funny. But okay. All right. We're gonna do some professional level. But this is S tier. Aluminum grade tactical reaction watching. Because this crazy segment from Alex Jones and John Kirikow, I wanted to bring this to your guys' attention because I find it to be a cut away from like what we're hearing. And what I will say is I think there's a couple things I'll put in here too. Is that three kind of things I want to work on with what we have going on here, which is, and also thank you to the subscription, Lord Vito. So we have one story coming out, and this is being pushed by Colonel McGregor, somebody I actually like a lot, is his idea is that, well, not his idea, but he's reporting and pushing, and we have reports and evidence of this, that sailors on the USS Gerald Ford are sabotaging the plumbing in an attempt to, I guess, not die for Israel, which is funny. Beyond that, what they were finding in some of these sewage lines was like rolled up t-shirts and undershirts, right? So people are clearly, trying to sabotage the line. But like I said at the top of the hour, you also have Tucker Carlson pushing this idea that Israel wants to decouple from the United States because they view the sentiments not going to be here forever. At some point, America will turn on us. And so he's saying, because they also recognize this fact, that they're moving to couple and attach themselves to India. And for those who are loosely familiar, you know that there is already a strong connection with India and Israel. Now, there's a bit of a historical context with that, but even during the 12-Day War, before we struck them with the B-2 bunker buster, what we ended up getting was that a lot of the Mossad agents Iran was finding was a bunch of Indians they were pulling out of their country, which was crazy. So, and then in addition to that, what we also have is, I think, a bit more beefier between the groups. Tucker Carlson's been pretty beefy as well, but it's this idea from Kirikow and Alex Jones that it's just crazy. I guess let me just lay that out. It's just kind of crazy because it seems to be just out there. So without further ado, I won't explain it much more. Let's just take a listen. And here it is. And I got to skip past it. Alex does this weird starter thing where he plays half a thing, and then it cuts to like metal hardcore music, and then it just starts again. Let's do it like right here. And Alex is looking like Humpty Dumpty. You know what I mean? He's looking rough here. But again, this is the person who I think is containment. So we're watching this with a watchful eye, right? What are they pushing that's entirely incorrect? Or what sentiment are they trying to build? What narrative are they trying to build? That's what we're looking for here. Do not take what we're about to hear with anything as like a strong ounce of like, well, that's really what's going on. We need to be taking this with a grain of salt of what is being pushed here. What's the sentiment that's being driven? I like Alex a lot, but I find him to be extremely disingenuous nowadays. Let's go.
If they think they're really going to fall and they decide not to run to Russia, they probably know they can't even get out of there. They'll get shot down. If they hit their doomsday button, what kind of weapons do they have? From my intel, you know, they basically got the bombs ready, but you may disagree. But regardless, we know Hezbollah has sizable sleeper cells in Europe, United States. What's the probability if they're going down, they would access that? We see something like we saw in Mexico, but I would think much worse. Here in the US.
I would have to agree. I would have to agree with you. I don't think they have the bomb. The CIA has assessed twice that they don't have the bomb. They have the ability to make a bomb if they were to decide to enrich the uranium to weapons grade. That would take probably a period of weeks, maybe months. But
so this is the first thing that's being addressed. Talking about, does Iran actually possess the nuclear weapon? Kirikow says no. But he does contend, much like how Netanyahu has for years, that they are weeks away, that they could, if they wanted to, they could speed things up, which is the same old tired argument.
They don't have the delivery system for it. They don't have a missile that's capable right now of delivering a nuclear weapon, a nuclear bomb to Israel, for example. But that's not what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of what you just cited, that they do have Hezbollah sleeper cells all around the world. Not just in the Persian Gulf, but in Europe, in the greater Middle East, and even in South America, in places like Ciudad del Este, Paraguay, or Buenos Aires, for example, or Rio. They're all over the place. So we have to worry about that. But we also have to worry, I say this as a concerned American, we have to worry about hypersonic missiles and their use against aircraft carriers.
So I'm about to get into this, but the one thing I would say too is, think about that, right? What he's saying as a CIA contractor is that not only do they don't have the nukes, according to the two recent CIA assessments, but that even if they did, they don't have the technology to even get one to Israel, which is, that's not, it's a pretty, there's distance there, obviously. But that's a lot closer than if Iran were to even attempt to strike anywhere outside of like the Middle Eastern region, which I also find to be a bit like, I wasn't expecting to hear that, right? I wasn't expecting to hear that Iran's, missile capability for a nuclear warhead was so lessened compared to their ability with the ICBMs, right? And Tix is picking up on what I'm about to get to right here. Here comes the hypersonic. This is the thing that we're pushing here now. And I was curious, I wanted to know what Tix's response would be. And for those who don't know, understand Tix 3D prints missiles and sells them to the government. Well, not really, but that's basically what he does. So we pay attention to what Tix says around here about the ballistics.
The conventional wisdom is that an aircraft carrier cannot defend itself from a hypersonic missile. Can you imagine the fallout if the Iranians sunk the USS Abraham
And
Lincoln?
let's raise that. From what we know, what do they have? I'm told some pretty advanced stuff. And have they gotten the new Chinese missiles delivered? And explain to people what would it look like if Trump commits to this? They shoot a bunch of these at aircraft carriers. The aircraft carrier, it makes it in, and we have an aircraft carrier on fire.
Exactly.
So, and again, the reason why I'm bringing the attention here is because we had recently covered the General Dan Kane report, the Pentagon's top advisor, Trump's top military advisor, the guy who comes into the office with Hegseth and JD Vance and he goes, here's the military options. That guy. He was the one who was pushing the munitions being critical, right? Talking about that it's going to complicate things. He was still laying options on the table. He even denied reports that was saying to not go strike Iran. He was saying, no, I'm going to keep all the options on the table. But it's the secondary thing beyond the munitions, which was that the Arab countries, for two reasons. One, they are against the strike against Iran. But secondarily, Iran has threatened the other Arab countries that surround the area. And it's because of that the other Arab countries early on have notified Washington that's a no-go. Like, you cannot use their airspace. Do not do it. Which then puts it back into, so where will the U.S. be launching the strikes from? Well, the carriers. But what's being pushed here? That if they got a strike from the carriers and the carriers end up being the number one target because that's how the U.S. is conducting the operation, not from the different bases surrounding the area or not from the airspace outside of just the direct path from the west. And now he's floating that this hypersonic missile would annihilate a USS carrier. And so it's kind of like, to me, it's kind of like building this extreme fear porn for like this fearful element of like the United States is like really, not ready for what is about to happen, which I find to be further from the truth and reality. But listen to what he says afterwards in terms of like the picture that it would paint, the false flag that this would paint to see a USS carrier, blown up.
Imagine an aircraft carrier strike force or aircraft carrier battle group as a hornet's nest, with the carrier itself the nest. And you've got all these hornets flying around it. And the hornets, though, are offensive. They have the ability to defend the nest, and they have the ability to defend themselves against conventional missiles, surface to surface or air to surface missiles. But hypersonics move faster than the speed of sound. And there's no clear defense against a hypersonic missile. The Iranians have them. They've purchased them from the Chinese. They've also purchased them from the Russians. We actually don't have hypersonics yet. We're still in development on ours.
Tix, is this true? I meant to look that up last night. Because if so, this report is a little worrying, right? If Iran went out of their way to buy the supersonics from China, and the U.S. can't, we don't have an interceptor, or we don't even have them ourselves. Okay, word. Okay, word. Perfect. Okay, so we're getting a bunch of bull. This is what it seems to be, right? This fear porn, this element here. And this isn't me making an argument to go bomb Iran. But it is an argument to say there's something clearly and obviously inorganic with Kirikow's ubiquitous nature.
They're not terribly difficult to make, but they take time. Well, we're not sure that we can defend against an Iranian supersonic missile. And as I said, even if it doesn't destroy an aircraft carrier, if you have to tow an aircraft carrier into port and put it in dry dock for 2 years or 3 years to repair what this missile has done with it, it's going to change the complexity.
Sure,
of
and if the Houthis would even more.
The technical details aside, I do agree with that assessment, though, which is to say, if CNN and the Daily Wire and Fox News and ABC News and all of that were to start airing 24 hours around the clock that a USS air carrier was struck by insert anybody, I think rather quickly the American people would immediately jump to, we need to respond back. Because again, these carriers are how, I don't know if they said it yet or not, but I think they will. The USS carriers, they are how the United States purports strength. It's how they show our strength and we show our power. And I do think there is something with that. I mean, think of how strong the element was of when we saw the Venezuelan boat, right? When we were playing that on CNN, right? Going over and over and over, right? With this, watching as like the Predator missile locks onto a boat of like 400 people. I do think in the inverse, it would also have that kind of effect, if you will.
Primitive missiles can hit ships 50 miles out. Imagine what they've got. So why, and I know you're right, why has China and Russia and everybody else developed large, capable, when you've seen it in use in Ukraine, Mach 15, Mach 10, even higher missiles?
Right.
Why? And then the U.S. tries to test them and they fail. What war planners didn't think that the United States needs hypersonic missiles or hypersonic missile defense?
Yeah, it's a mystery. Every time I talk to somebody at the Pentagon, they always talk about how excited they are about the.
Is this a training video? Did you guys sketch this? Hold on. We don't need to hear him again. Look at this training video. Look at the symbol on the sign they're shooting. Is this real, dude? There's no way that's real. They're getting into it. It's like all they flash is just that one segment right there. That's funny. Israel? One could say Israel.
onto the battlefield. Okay. What about defending against hypersonic missiles?
They bought
and
it from
supersonic
Howard
missiles?
Lutnick.
What are we going to do about that? We're just going to let all of our ships sink? We've got 24 aircraft carriers. 12 of them are seaworthy. Several are in the process of being scrapped or retired. But we've got 12 that
And
are
that's how the
seaworthy.
U.S. protects power. So let me ask you this question. Let's be cynical here. I don't mean with Trump. We know
That was a generational pause, dude.
limited military understanding. He's really smart in ways, but folks, he's even admitted, I was naive. I thought all the generals were conservative. Oh yeah, right. They're globalist. Most of them, General Phil say that.
Globalists.
I really, this is what I'm thinking. Instead of having a fake Gulf of Tonkin, they can have a real Pearl Harbor.
Literally.
And the psychological warfare experts know, we see our carrier group on fire. America's going to go ape shit and probably nuke Iran. And I think that's what this is the ultimate false flag. But it's not even a false flag. We position them into this, and then Iran sinks an aircraft carrier, and it's over.
I don't know about like the nuke and the technical details. I do just heavily agree. Like if you're, I mean, like you think about that. I mean, think about how you would feel if you would be angry just in general in the sense, right? But, dying for Israel and whatnot. But just if that, and let's hope and let's pray that it doesn't. But if you were to see that on your TV and it was, it's a USS carrier and it's the Gerald Ford or whatever, and you're watching as the footage shows you as it's just like, barely towing along, or even worse, it's sinking. And, we lost a lot of people off of it. I do think the sentiment towards the war with Iran would immediately change. I think a lot of people would immediately go full send, just get rid of them. I can't see the response of the American people seeing that would be to go, all right, everybody, let's pack it in, let's back out. Maybe it would, but I tend to find that I think it would do the opposite.
Oh man, I could not agree more. I think you've hit the nail right on the head there. We've all studied the Gulf of Tonkin. We've all studied 9/11. We've all studied Pearl Harbor. If the Iranians actually do sink an aircraft carrier, you're right. It's World War III. Because the Israelis are going to jump in immediately. The Israelis are itching to use nuclear weapons, especially against Iran. And you know what's funny? The Israelis have been saying since 2004 that the Iranians were 6 weeks away from a nuclear weapon. Since 2004. 22 years they've been saying, oh my God, it's 6 weeks away.
And we know all the rest. But just the way they're kind of laying it out, it to me was like reeking of that kind of like that fear element, or like the panicking element, getting people to kind of like be up and out and concerned and terrified, which, you compare that with, his allowance to be on TikTok is just very concerning who this John Kirikow individual is in the kind of space. And Zeb Boykin said it's cracked me up. He said John Kirikow's on his generational run right now in the last couple of months. But I did think that was a crazy segment between them. And what we'll do next here is we'll go to Tucker's claims on Israel. Now, he did have a couple more, but I think this one specifically was probably the big one, if you will. And I think the post I saw it from had like a little over 1 million views on it. So I guess we'll see where it's at now. Okay, not 1 million, but 600K, a lot. 16,000 likes. I guess I assume if I see 10K likes, it's got 1 million views. Seems to be the general ratio for like a good post or whatever. But you can just see this right here. To abandon the U.S. for India. Now, for those who have been paying attention to my show, you guys know that we have been covering the fact that Israel has been outspoken in their willingness to want to, leave the Iranians alone, in their willingness to want to decouple from the United States. And they've shown this and signaled this and acted upon it in terms of the 115, I believe it's either 115 or 120, something in that ballpark, $1 billion that Israel's now divesting to build their own independent arms complex, building their own military industrial complex. And you know, we even had, I believe it's about a month ago now at this point, where Bibi Netanyahu had said, I don't know if he was referencing the public sentiment, but he was referencing just generally their willingness and want to decouple from the United States and be more self-sufficient. Now, how much of that do you actually trust? I don't know. But it was curious because the response from Trump was, no, don't go. We need you. No, we want to support Israel. We want to give you guys billions and millions of dollars. So there has been some elements of that. And here's the thing. I would say, if they were being strategic, this is something they're going to have to do. I think you could make the strong argument right now that the Israeli sentiment in America will never go back to what it was. They might struggle and fight tooth and nail, but think about how much money they have to continually dump to propagandize people who quite literally, if they're not retarded, can be told what the truth is and they're not going to believe it anymore. So I think that they see that as a failing element. I think that they know that they can't continue to divest lots of millions of dollars into it because it's just a waste of money at a certain point. So if they're being realistic, strategic, and we understand them as the long-term planners, the long-term orchestrators that they are, you have got to think that they're already planning on what this decoupling will look like. What doesn't Israel look like if it's not attached to the United States? They have to, right? And again, the number one most important principle of someone of the Jewish faith in general is the state of Israel. And again, this is where the neocons come from. It is the state of Israel's existence being threatened will change the most hippy-dippy liberal Jew into a war hawk, because that is their most top supreme principle, is the future and the existence of Israel. So if we have all these facts on the table, I think the easy prediction would be, or the easiest thing that you could say would be, well, of course they're looking forward. They're looking down the lens going, there's a very real possibility that we can't maintain the support in America. It just will become unfeasible. So what's next? Is that India? We already know they have a decent relationship with each other. I'm not sure. Is it going to be that close? Is it going to be on a 5-year basis, 10-year, 20, 30? Who knows? But I do think if they were being honest and objective about the cards on the table right now, I think they would have to contend with the fact that they're losing they're losing the 8th front war, if you will, the digital social media warfare. They control the money supply. Money is no issue. I get that. It's also on the same lens, though, of the fact of they still have to not play by the book, if you will, but they do things in a way that makes it hard to trace the trail. This is very common when you're trying to do anything explaining, like Jewish behavior or Israeli involvement. You have to do a lot of explaining. You have to be able to connect the dots, and I think this is part of them being able to cover their tracks pretty well. Not everywhere, not all the time, but typically pretty good at it. Being conniving, if you will. But here's Tucker, and this is his take and what he's saying about this future decoupling from Israel.
But what about the United States? Israel's benefactor, its closest ally. Why would they want that? Well, maybe if you're gaming this out a little bit, you've decided we need a new superpower. Public opinion in this country has swung against us so hard. This bipartisan consensus that we're its closest ally is disintegrating before our very eyes. And let's be honest with ourselves, this is not going to continue forever. We need another country to be aligned with. Now, how many big countries are there to choose from? It's got to be physically large, big population, nuclear armed. Not too many. In fact, the big ones would be China and India. But China, unfortunately, is a Han ethno-state. So you can't really turn its population against itself in order to increase your own power. It's not going to work. It's resistant to this, to manipulation. And that leaves India. And it was probably no coincidence that the Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Modi, spoke to the Knesset today about the ancient ties between Israel and India. Bottom line, yes, Israel is moving on from the United States at some point, probably sooner rather than later, to India. And so weakening the United States in a war with Iran is not all bad. In fact, it might be good, because then there's no rivalry at all in your region. It's you, the only country with nuclear weapons, and everybody else.
So I'd just like to take the time before he finishes. This is what I've also been seeing. This theme is what I've also been seeing as well too. Now, I don't know how organic it is or if it's being pushed by Tucker's camp because it goes in line with what he's saying here. But just to bring it to your attention, this is another theory that's circulating. One that I've not really tangled with, but I'll try to explain it, summarize it, I guess, be concise. And it's this idea that with Vigilante saying right here, they're weakening us in every way before throwing us under the bus, which is what Tucker's also asserting here in terms of the pushing us to the Iran war. Then once the Iran war pops off, then they use that as kind of like their leaping card to switch away from the United States, taking advantage of a weakened United States that is also simultaneously operating and getting its resources drained by the constant, weapons and munition we're giving over to Ukraine in their defense of Russia. And like we mentioned on stream the other day, all of the proxy fighting that's occurring in some places you don't even hear about, right? There's fighting in smaller locations across the board, but very specifically into this one, that one that's draining from Patriot missiles and just some of the SM2s and SM3s, is the proxy warfare happening around Yemen and across the Red Sea. For who? In defense of Israel. So there is, and this is part of what Dan Kane's, and again, we'll go back to the report from, again, Pentagon's top military advisor, Trump's top guy. That's what they said. And that's the first part of his concern in the complexity of going to war with Iran, is if it's extended, if it's a regime change war, then you can expect that it will take weeks, if not months. If it's a surgical strike, a decapitation strike, if it's Operation Lake Maduro, then it'll be a lot quicker. But the fear is if we try to launch the regime change attack, that's going to be long and drawn out. And if anything complicates it from there, I mean, verbatim, the article says there may be a decision that has to be made about which conflict has higher priority. Talking about like drastically and rapidly pulling out of one of the other ones in order to maintain and be able to have the upkeep and have the munitions to maintain a conflict with Iran. So there is there's just a lot. There's a lot with this that I think it's concerning. It really is. And I wouldn't say, and I wouldn't push Dan Kane as being somebody who's trying to getting a message out or anything. Because I think he's been pretty square in the way that he continually addresses what his operation is. He's a square cut guy for the most part from all that I've read of him. But I do think that element is concerning. And I think if you were to, if push came to shove, I mean, just do a basic, equation in your head. Do you think the United States would to help back Israel would pull out of Ukraine, or to help Ukraine would pull out defense from Israel? I think it's obvious. I think they would rapidly leave Ukraine, which is I think by scope and scale a generally bigger conflict in terms of the people it's affecting and in the land masses as well. It's a lot. And again, the whole thing here is, the hope is that we don't go to war with Iran. The hope is that we don't. I think for the reality is it's just kind of imminent. We're all waiting for when it will happen. I think it's kind of the cards are on the table now at this point. But I will let Tucker finish his thought here.
So you can kind of do whatever you want. You don't have to worry about hostile neighbors. You can expand the size of your territory, for example. You can move your borders in all directions. Who's going to stop you? No one. So if you game this out for a minute, the things that from an American perspective seem horrifying, like real downsides, holy smokes, we could tank the U.S. economy. We could wreck the energy sector, at least temporarily. Some of our key Arab allies could be disabled by this. Those all seem very bad from an American perspective. Are they so bad from an Israeli perspective? No, they're not, actually. They may be the point long term.
So Tucker doing Tucker things. He has become the enigma of this political space so far. Many people are unsure where and why and what he's pushing and for how and for who and how much is he being paid, right? I think that seems to be the question from a lot of people. I just typically enjoy, I think that there are elements, obviously. I think Tucker is controlled in some way. I don't know if he's a capital F federal asset, but I do think that it's basically been decided by most people in this space that there is something inorganic about him. He is holding some kind of position. The question is who's playing those cards. Zeb is also actually completely correct. Muslims aren't white. So if you are a white Muslim, understand you are just a Muslim. And this is in reference to the Albanian ASU frat leader who let it slip that he's Muslim. But I wanted to bring that to your attention. The other story with Tucker Carlson that kind of is in line with this is the Owl Pouch one, but that's being pushed by Laura Loomer, and who knows how true that is. She's just trying to be divisive, annoying, a nuisance. That's what Laura Loomer is. And, I will say one of the most disheartening things I think I've ever witnessed in my life is ever I scroll the timeline and I see that the hair twirls. Yeah, that is the other one. But when I see that Laura Loomer ever has a post that has more than 100 likes, I that black pills me, actually, because I can't imagine being so mind raped that you think Laura Loomer is ever making a point. And I don't mean that to be harsh, but I mean that to be real. And it's in the same vein of maybe it's people who just found out about Laura Loomer yesterday, or maybe they just can't read, or maybe they all have Down syndrome, and I'm rapidly overestimating the IQ of America. But man, it's like, it's brutal sometimes. And she's been having some, her going after Nick Shirley and Tyler Oliveira, she's been getting a lot of love. And, it could be bonded and things like that too as well. But man, and the thing is too, is I'm, because I cover people, right, with YouTube and so all of that. So I typically don't block. I try to avoid blocking because I don't want to ever have a moment where I'm missing a side of a story or missing a side of a timeline or an event because I'm blocked. I literally blocked the other person. But she's getting close. She's getting close. It is if you want to ruin your day, just show me Laura Loomer's profile picture. Instantly, you're just all right, dude. Day's ruined. Week's ruined. Actually, week is ruined. Anna Kasparian also going pretty hard. Yes, going hard. Anna Kasparian, yes, she was one of the two people that got me into politics. Tweeting saying Goyim no has been great. And what's crazy is Tim Pool's got to show his Zionist self. He's coming out. And again, he's trying to bait people, and there's an element of he's trying to rage people out, but he's doing it on purpose because he knows what the common accusation against him is. So when he's, and he quoted Anna Kasparian, and he was like, "It's the Jews," and it's dude, do you know how many clips exist of you shutting down conversations or being intentionally retarded or being willfully ignorant? No one's with that anymore. These are the things that damage your credibility. And again, that's Tim Pool in a nutshell for you. And Zeb is right on this too. Anna will actually say it though. She walks right up to the edge, has been for 5 years. And this is the point. And the same thing is true of basically everybody there, right? The Young Turks, right? TYT. Anna, I would say, is actually a few grades above where Cenk Uygur is, but Cenk Uygur is he's just kind of insane at a certain point. He does have a strong element of CDS. I don't like Trump anymore, or really, I mean, the relationship with Trump is rocky, dude. It's like a bad ex. It's you always come back. No, just kidding. But Cenk does have an element of TDS that makes it hard to listen to him. Because if you think the problem at all at any point in time has ever been just Trump in and of himself, it's you're also missing the point there too. Trump's not the best, don't by any means, but it's the powers that they ascribe to Donald Trump and his orchestration and things like that, it goes retarded. But Zeb is spot on. Anna Kasparian is the Goyim, no, she gets all the supremacy elements of it, but she, again, it's the Israelis. It's Mossad. It has literally nothing to do with the ethnicity. You'll find many people arrive at this argument, actually, and this is the containment element. You can criticize Israel, you can criticize Netanyahu, you can criticize Mossad, but you can't criticize Jews. And if you did, and I mean, think about where we are, right? We're simultaneously entertaining race realism between the obvious disparities that exist in America between the different, racial IQs and just general cultural differences as well. But the one area where where it's still a really hard fight to get to is listen, it's not just blacks. Obviously blacks have we have a strong identity. We the character of a black person is known by all now at this point. But it's the fact that it's the other races too, including whites. Whites have distinct patterns of behavior. Jews have distinct patterns of behavior. Indians have distinct patterns of behavior. And it's in this tied element, and part of it, it does stem back to the actual Bible, right? The Bible is the living word. It's not that story that happened over there somewhere, right? The Bible is the living word of God. And so I think, and I made this argument to Zeb too yesterday on the show. I think part of this is if you opened up the gate to the full blown criticism of people in general towards those that are Jewish, whether secular or religious or not, it would open up the full wave of criticism that comes from the Christian arena, which is to say, it puts where the rubber meets the road on what the Bible said. Those who say they are Jews but are not, connecting the words of Jesus Christ to the actions that occur that they get rage about, that they try to ban verbatim from HR 60. Oh my gosh, HR 6090. Is it HR 6090? It has to be. Positive it is. And those connections, were they to be made, were they to be laid out, would make a stronger case for Christianity. It would make the Christianity case so much stronger, because you would go, look, as Jesus said, look how they behave, look at the actions there. But they have to apply the fog of war, because if the average person was able to apply all of that from Christianity and then be able to see it again as the living word, as it is, what Jesus said literally is happening in front of all of us, you would connect that. To me, I think that would, for a lot of people, would help affirm them also, in the faith. It would also help them, when you can actually connect and see the real realities occurring as it's described in the Bible. I think for many Christians, it would bolster the argument. It would strengthen their relationship to it. But I do think there is an element of that is intentionally trying to obfuscate that reality, that they are acting in the exact manner that Jesus said that they would. And that's the big one for me, which is I refuse to live in the country. Oh, hopefully my phone just died. Whew, thought I got banned. That's the part that for me is what drives me up the wall, which is I refuse to be in the nation that my forefathers built as Christian men, for white Christian European men, as the bastion of liberty in the West, to arrive in a position 200 years later where Christians are being told what they can and cannot say because it is deemed too anti-Semitic. No, just flat out, no. If we're not doing that, I will not go back in that box. My advice to everyone else is to not go back in that box. You will never control the conversation again. Period. And part of the reason too is the technology has become a little bit so unfettered that it's capable of being able to do this. I got a couple super chats here. Forgive me. I'm going to catch up to them. I got a couple of these regular chats in here too. I'm going to get you guys as well. Dude, that one's, come on. I don't know what that is. No, just kidding. It's I'm hit a 6 or you, Jay. No, I literally just said gibberish. Become Numa says, Alice, did you catch Webben and Michael E. Jones interview? I have not yet. I still need to go and watch in full the Jared Taylor and Joel Webben interview. I only made it an hour into that one. Well, thank you for the super chat from Safely Bitcoin. He says, all the, quote, welcome to late stage capitalism. People are real quiet on the topic of J involvement. Agreed. and again, that is this one of the bigger differences of opinion, right? It's like, what is like when you look between the difference of the groups and the dissident right, and I think that's kind of where you get the argument of America first versus white first versus Christ first. There's arguments that happen in there, but you're spot on, right? And I think again too, there's an element of this that I think they did a good job getting the Jewish supremacy element quickly wrapped up and pushed out of the Epstein files. And then we were all talking about, and not to say like one's worse than the other, but I do think that's the more important element is describing and putting out in front of people like, no, look how they talk about you. Look, clearly there's a racialized element in the Epstein files. You can't ignore that. And for what reason it matters is because from what country largely is this all these actions being attributed to? Who is Epstein being attributed for working for? For what reasons? Why was he doing these things? But again, like Nick said, it quickly kind of condenses into no one's talking about that. And we're talking about like the more provocative elements, which is like the photos and the young girls and like the satanic elements of it too, which I think again generally takes away from what would be the biggest point to take away from what we got in that batch of the Epstein files. Oh, another one here. So true. Thank you very much. I don't know when I said that you said that, but thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate it greatly. From Caleb Camarillo. Or Camarillo. Or Camarillo. $20 super chat. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate that greatly. We got Trump in here. Trump himself is in here. I didn't know Trump was watching my streams. Dude, I gotta stop hitting my desk. I'm a big dude. I'm gonna knock my camera over. Big in the bad way, unfortunately. I'm old now. But that was the Tucker interview. We covered that one. This is one of the next ones, and we're kind of moving a few different topics away, but I want to make sure I can cover what I can. James Fishback did confirm that he watches America First, and not only do we get it in text or in a post, but we got it in video form, and it's with him signing one of these GIA hats. So we're going to take a look at that just to see some of this language. I will say there's a bad moment at the end of this. There's a rough moment for Fishback at the end of this. I don't want to dog him, but, we got to be honest with ourselves. And this is this right here from Joan. Fishback's top guy. This is literally his top guy. If you guys are familiar in any sense with any of the posting accounts that have been supportive of Fishback, this Joan from DC guy, like, literally is his top guy. He's posting stuff nonstop. I really don't know who he is. I assume he is a real person. It says Joan from DC. So just to let you know that. And we have Donnybrook. Thank you very much for the Albanian flag. Thank you. You just wanted me to click on the Albanian flag. All right. I appreciate the super chat. I'm going to just start leaning fully into the Albanian. I'm ASU frat leader, but Christian. I'm the other side of Albania, which if you people who don't know, Albania's got a pretty strong split on their religious, on different religions there. This is Sir Tix from House of Narnia. I haven't seen the Chronicles of Narnia in such a long time. I enjoyed reading them as a kid. A Wrinkle in Time, all of that series there. But here's the video. Here's Fishback, and here's a bunch of young white men.
It's a good hat right here. This is a good hat right here. This is a great one. It stands for two different things.
That's funny. I like Circle.
I think Goyim in Abundance is my favorite.
That's pretty fucking bad. That's badass, man.
I watched the show. What am I gonna do?
Yeah, America First, baby. And Fishback First too.
Let's go, baby.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate it, guys.
I want one of the shirts so bad. The bad moment's about to happen. And it's not bad in any federal sense or intelligence service sense. It's just bad because it's cringe. So right here, dude.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Right here.
Thank you. I'm glad that you're back.
Oh, dude. Ooh. Did you see it? It was quick, dude. It's quick. It happened so fast.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
He gets the shake here. He thinks he's going to go in for a deeper hug. Watch this.
Glad that you're back.
Oh, dude. Oh, no. Just the pat, dude. Just the pat, man. I ain't getting in too close, dog. You cool, bro, but you ain't that cool. I saw this at the end. I don't know, for whatever reason, it caught my attention. I was like, I was going to make sure I keep that in the back here. Because There's just cringe. But we love Fishbag. I like Fishbag. I think no matter what you think about him, I think his rhetoric is good. And I think regardless of what you think he may or may not do, I think the rhetoric is permeating. I think the rhetoric is penetrating the ecosystem. And it's in that I think that there's reason to support Fishbag. And I think specifically in the Florida race, you have Jay Collins, Apex Shakur, James Fishbag. So you have the big Jew boy, right, who's Byron Donalds, right? Then you have the backup, you have the backup APAC, second option, plan B, in Collins. And then you have Fishbag. So it's, to me, it's like what he had to lose, right? Because at the very end of it, if your belief is he's bad too, he's containment. Well, it's like, well, okay, we'll just take your pick then. It's because they're basically all the same. So why wouldn't you not go with the one that would at least show the public that you can run on a platform like this and be successful? That's the benefit in this, regardless of what you think about Fishbag. And even if he was a joke, it's the fact that he's running on a platform that's very America First based and very heavily adjacent to Christian nationalism. I don't know if I would go so far as to say it is. That's why you would support him. Show the public that you can. You can be a candidate just like Fishbag and you'll get success. That, I think, is the benefit out of that. Swinley Ball says, what? What? What even language is this? What? He just cursing me out? You cursing me out in Albanian? No, I'm just kidding. I'm not trying to say it though. Te duavea. Te duavea. In your ancestral language, what would that be? I guess it depends on who's saying that. It was what whoever they think's what my ancestry is. It says, I love you, brother. Thank you very much. And I love you guys too. And as always, I'm rooting for you guys. And one point I meant to make earlier that I forgot about, and part of this is just, because I have thoughts bouncing off of my head between, with Esperon, with Zeb Boykin, and having these conversations. And one thing I want to make the strong point about is this. Going into things like ethos and charisma, which I talk at length about, I think there also is an element here, which is for a lot of these guys, right? For a lot of men, I feel like they also are black-pilled because they feel like they lack purpose, or they don't have something that's in the garage they can go and work on, every so often. They don't have, dude, get out of here. Get out of here, dude. Get out. That's funny though. I appreciate it, man. And Base Holiday, I'll answer your question here in just a second. But it's the way I kind of viewed this analogy, and this is kind of what I said to Esperon earlier today, which is when you're youngin' and you're with like your dad, or you're with your uncles, you're with your dad and your grandpa, and they're talking about the engine, or they're talking about fishing, or they're talking about construction, or they're talking about, insert any one of these kind of elements that are categorically dominated by men. You as the youngling or the apprentice aren't going to sit there and be giving your thoughts and opinions of like, oh, I think we should go over there. The elders are just going to laugh you out of the room. So why is that though? Why do you not have the confidence to say that? Well, it's because you don't have the education, and you don't have the education because you lack the experience. And what ends up occurring for most of these guys is they end up 18, 19, 20. And they've been working the job for 5-6 years now. They've handled it. You could say they even have a mastery of it. Well, now, because you have the education, you understand it, you have the experience, and you have the mastery. Well, now you feel very confident to talk about the thing that you've been working on the last 6 years. It's in this lens that I think that there is an element that needs to be handed out. That I think for a lot of us, and for maybe just men in general, we do need to become more articulate. And I say this in the sense not to say that every person could be someone like Nick Fuentes, but or that you need to have a show or anything. And that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making here would be, imagine if your boomer grandfather came to you and said, "What are you worried about the Epstein files?" which is a video that's been circulating today. But imagine if you were as articulate and as knowledgeable as somebody like these spaces, somebody that you do follow in these spaces that has a lot to say and makes points. If you were able to turn yourself into that stream of consciousness and be able to argue your points, would you not feel more confident in arguing for your side, defending your positions? Would you be less willing to let things slide if you heavily disagreed with them and could articulate and demonstrate why it was wrong and why you wouldn't want to do said thing? And I see this, right, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the charisma element and with the ethos, which is, bro, you can go to the gym day and night, but if you are terrified of talking to women and you don't talk to women, you will forever lack the experience and then, therefore, the mastery of ability to speak to women, right? So it's to say there's a bit more pieces on the board that kind of wraps itself in this idea of purpose and being black-pilled and having the confidence and charismatic ability to hold these positions and be that said pillar in community. So that is why, you know, I want this show to be as educational as possible. I want this to be, you know, I want funny moments in there too, but I very specifically want to be able to hand over, like the same way that Nick hands over information to me, and I'm sure you guys as well too, being able to give you all of these great points and tips and advice and the education, the ability to understand, because it's more than just education, right? You know, everybody knows there's like these 3-hour videos that float around about, you know, how Israel controlled the West, but why does nobody click on them? And it's because they're dry, they're boring, and therefore they lack the ability to charismatically articulate their points, therefore resulting in a lack of education from a bunch of men who can't finish watching the documentaries. And it's in that I do think there is a call for many of us, and myself included, to become smarter, to read more. I mean, this is not a joke. I mean, like literally, and I think a lot of people say it, and I think a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people say those things, a lot of people don't. And studying the Bible, exactly, become pneuma. From this point, exactly, how many of you guys could feel confident describing the difference between post-mill and pre-mill? I'm sure some of you could. I'm sure some of you do it daily. But there's probably some of you here that going, I don't know if I have a strong grasp on that. And those are the things that I think that you should have strong grasp on. These are the things that you should. Because instead of just being able to say like, no, Huckabee just loves Israel because he loves Jews, isn't as convincing as a point as no, Huckabee has fallen into the trap that is pre-millennial dispensationalism that was brought about by the edited Schofield Bible, the Schofield Study Bible, that was pushed on him by people like Louis Marshall. Like that is a much stronger argument in articulation of what your disagreement is than, and it's not me to say like, I don't care if you say Jew or not, that's not the point either, but it's to make the point of, if you had the mastery, the ability for you to be charismatic and confidently say, not going along with that, you know why? A, B, and C. No, we are doing this, you know why? Because A, B, and C. No, I'm a Christian nationalist because A, B, and C. And then build off of it. Keep going. Keep building that plethora of knowledge, being this kind of wheelhouse, being this intellectual, and again, the stream of consciousness, right? When you see somebody like Nick, you can tell he's a cut above. It just goes. And whether you agree or disagree with them, that's besides the point. You could bring up somebody like Scott Horton. Someone else I find to be very strong in the elements like this. Dave Smith is also kind of a student of Scott Horton's. But it's being able to just continually kind of like just send out information, connect dots, make points, and also win people over. And that's the most important part. It doesn't matter if you know everything, if you can't convince somebody, if you can't win over their heart and mind, and that is what matters. And that is what I think what the Groypers have, that things and movements in the past that they didn't have. Things like GLR, right? What was GLR's number one critique of the right wing, or one of its most common critiques? I posted this the other day. It was that the right cannot win hearts and minds. They focus on more incessant and mathematical and like logical issues, but that doesn't speak to people. And to me, that's what the cut above that Nick and the Groypers kind of represent. They represent this more of this idea that you can win over hearts and minds, that you can articulate yourself in a way that does lend itself to a belief, to an articulation, to a coalition, a conviction, a wantingness. But I wanted to make sure I got that point out. Forgive me, I kind of ranted for a hot minute, so I apologize for that. Base Holiday says, hey Atlas, what are your thoughts on Patrick Casey? this is what I will say about Patrick Casey. I'm not familiar enough with Patrick Casey to tell you what I personally think of him. What I will say, though, is Patrick Casey is notoriously linked and always moving with the same groups of people like Captive Dreamer, like John Doyle, like you could go down the line, like the kind of a bit more of the BAP space. And they're not even really connected, but they kind of are. So Patrick Casey, to me, does stick out as somebody who is in that kind of space. Now, I would need to hear and see more of him, but he's typically not somebody who ever comes up on my timeline for whatever reason. I know of him, but it's kind of the same thing with Richard Spencer. Like, I'm very familiar with Richard Spencer, but I really don't know too much about him beyond like Charlottesville and his connection with Nick, or his relationship with Nick, I should say. But I would just say, for a lot of me, if I don't know somebody, what I will typically do is judge them by like who they're closely associated with, right? And I think that seems to be the kind of an easy measure or an easy thing to use as a heuristic of like, is this person like decent or not? But I'll look up some more about Patrick Casey, and I'll give you a better answer next time. Yeah, native friend, read Wicca, read. And yeah, I wanted to make sure I could stress that point, because it's kind of like what I'm finding out as I'm going through all the debates and stuff too, or preparing for debates, or I want to be ready for a debate, right? Say Chuck Mason comes out again and he's like, hey, I want to debate that we should support Israel. Okay, well, I want to be able to just slam it, right? I want to be able to I want the debate to look like I'm taking my keyboard over the head of the person, you know. I'm going to bat with, not to be violent, but to be like, I want to win these debates handedly too. Nativist Friend says, been trying to learn how fiction is written and structured because I think the right should learn to write fiction. And this is another strong critique of the right. And not only does the right not have a mainstream kind of financier or at least a coalition or network of people who are affluent and able to kind of dump money and push money around for influence, we also seemingly have a big gap in people who don't do fiction or the arts or the culture. And this was actually kind of my step into back into YouTube. And I think I probably explained the story before. Maybe I'll click off this for a second. But quite simply, the idea behind when I came back to YouTube was I had this epiphany when I was watching an Asmongold video where I realized like he largely only reacts to like left-wingers or like left adjacent or left-leaning individuals. And it hit me. I was like, why is there not a kind of a right-winger who's making these, like heavily edited, but explainer videos or story or coverage videos from a right-wing perspective? So that's always kind of been my proxy when I'm making something, is I'm like, when I make a video, I want to make it in the format that like somebody like Asmongold would watch it and react to it to help proliferate into the culture the message. And how do you do that? Well, you're going to have to not, could you imagine a video of mine if I was like, okay, well, here's the next thing on screen. Yeah, I mean, talk about that, okay. Yeah. Okay, here's the next thing, guys. This happened today. This is the article from the Mail. Yeah. Dang them Democrats. The Mail. We got to support Israel. The Mail. Things like that article. I mean, it's unwatchable. And quite frankly, a lot of right wingers, I can't watch them. And I don't mean that to be rude at all. I just find it to be, if you're going to be a YouTuber and you want to actually make content, it's like, I'm going to make something that is breathable and has the bells and whistles. It makes somebody want to stay the extra second. It does kind of poke and prod at a few things. It tries to make some humor at a few places. And that's kind of what I see from a lot of people on the right. It's like they don't even put effort into their content. We have John Doyle doing a series on black people, and he's recording the whole thing wearing AirPods and looking down in a selfie video. You know what I mean? So it's like people on TikTok are more creative than right wingers sometimes. And I just find it to be lazy, if you will. And I find it to be not willing to go the extra step to kind of really, and I'm not even close to like the best editor, bro. Like I use CapCut, I got to spend extra amounts of time sometimes going to YouTube and being like, how do I do this again? Oh, okay. I'm like getting the cheat codes from the guys who actually can do the editing stuff. But that was kind of my walk back into it, was realizing the right doesn't make art. And also at the same time, I was following a lot of Arthur Kwan Lee, who I think he does a lot of great artwork as well too. And we have from Uncle House Leotardo. He is top guy here. Him and Donnie and Tix. These are the top guys here. And Splenda and Titan as well. Patrick Casey led Identity Europa. They got docs. Now he bent the knee and he's slightly right wing. Supports Trump and writes for Chronicles periodically. Interesting. Makes sense why I haven't heard much of him. Slightly right wing seems to be probably the best way to describe him. I've not read anything full with him, to be honest with you. Right wingers love the goy slap. Faithology says, well, the right needs to stop viewing art as gay and female. I think we need to essentially have our own Hollywood and not the lame Protestant vegetarian kind of Hollywood. Hey, the Daily Wire got Jonathan Majors. Woo! Y'all ready, dude? We're going to get Jonathan Majors and who's Gal Gadot? Dude, let's go, dude. Let's go, man. We're going to get an Israeli woman and a black guy. Woo! That, man. Kelvin Guy says, that's how I was drawn to Nick. Then in turn, you not being able to criticize your own side is an instant turn off. But this is kind of the point, right? Which is, people attack Nick all the time for being a bit more outspoken about his criticisms of people on the right. But that is kind of the point, which is like our movement is literally like, we're the beautiful losers. Like the whole thing we should be doing is attacking each other. We're not attacking each other, but critiquing why we're beautiful losers, right? This is kind of the point. Like, let's stop doing what we continually keep doing. Doyle has Blaze backing. Yeah, I saw that recently, right? Which is funny because I thought like years ago he was part of the Blaze. Apparently not. Apparently that was his whole life goal, was to be Glenn Beck's top guy. That's a whole other story. Now make them do the miscegenation. Yeah, right. Exactly. Oh, what's that? Gal Gadot marries Jonathan Major in this latest movie? That's crazy. I didn't see that coming. Who produced it? Steinberg? Sick, dude. Crazy, man. Crazy, man. Cypher's Basement says, what kind of art should we make? Well, I think all art. I think all art should be on the table. Yeah, I think all art should be on the table. I mean, period. And I do think it like for example, like the movies, right? The movies. But I think too often, like for the Daily Wire, like their movie is going to be about, it's the preachiness of the woke, but in the opposite direction. Not every character in the story needs to be a Christian for it to be a good movie, right? Like it needs to be. There was a really good movie that I have no idea, not movie, but it's a short series that's on Netflix, and it's kind of a horror movie. It's about vampires on an island. Why can I not think of the name of it? Because it's about this like Catholic. It's about this priest. Oh man, why can't I think of what it's called? I think I recommended you guys watch it not too long ago too. But besides the point, it literally has this kind of like crazy back and forth, right? So I'm kind of spoiling it, but it's been out for a little bit. We don't even know the name. Midnight Mass. Thank you. Midnight Mass. Okay, and that's kind of the point of the movie, which is this pastor is becoming a vampire, but he thinks what bit him was an angel, and so he develops this really perverted relationship with this vampire who he thinks is an angel. And the reason he thinks it was because he's about to die in the desert because he got lost on a trip because he had Alzheimer's. He's like 80 some years old. But when he wakes up, he's 25 years old again. He's young again. He feels alive. And it's like the angel's like watching over him. The vampire is. But in that movie, the hero is not the pastor. Although later on he does redeem himself. The hero is actually an atheist who they walk through the story of how it was so hard for him to believe. But it's through these events that he does find himself believing. And there's just such a badass moment in it where, and I'm kind of ruin a little bit, but it's badass. I'm going to tell you, mute it if you have to, if you don't want to hear spoilers, but I'm about to ruin it. The crazy moment is he writes this note because eventually the guy who has atheism gets infected, meaning like he's bitten by the vampire. And so garlic, but specifically sunlight. So sunlight will kill him if he gets near it, if the sunlight hits him. And the note he writes to the pastor at the end, because he lies and he's like, I won't tell anybody, you're right, I'm called cool, completely lies. He takes somebody out with him on this boat because he knows no one will believe him unless they actually see it. And it's this crazy scene. So he knows he's going to die. They sit in this boat, they ride all the way out ashore, they're like a mile offshore, and he's sitting there crying because the love of his life, she doesn't know it yet, is about to watch him get immolated by the sun. But he writes the Bible verse, from dust we came, to dust we shall return. And it's what he writes to the vampire. And that kind of reshocks the pastor into like, thinking broadly about, am I actually following God? And it shakes him back to being, being real, and going back to God. But the movie doesn't stick to these kind of extremely like stereotypical, and like you said earlier, these kind of veggie tale characteristics and traits of a story. So I think very specifically, I think that just look at VeggieTales and look at all the failures of the movies that didn't pop off in the Daily Wire. And I would just say, do differently, be willing to be able to step outside the box. Don't feel like you're entertaining Satan. Obviously don't push movies that push for things like degeneracy and violence and things of that nature. But it's also to say, don't be afraid to interact with the world around us. You need to be able to interact with the world around you. You can't make a point about a crooked stick if you're only ever able to show straight sticks. So this is kind of the point with that. And I think sometimes right wingers do feel afraid. They feel fundamentalist, right? They feel like they're trapped by principles, restricted by principle. And I think ultimately that's suffocating to art. Wow, I can rant, can't I? This is kind of unfortunate. It's a skill I didn't want to develop, but I am. But okay, I'm just kidding. There are a couple things I wanted to cover too. One story. This is the community submission. Completely forgot about this. We're going to cover this. We're going to go a little bit long, but I will cover this because House sent it in.
This is today's community submission.
So the community submission today, apologize for forgetting actually, is there's more kind of revelations coming out about Howard Lutnick. I think this is curious because I think it's really honing in on the fact that Howard Lutnick is going to be facing a lot of these pressures. He already is. They're already, both sides of the party are calling for Howard Lutnick to be brought back in for more investigations. I think James Comer said the Oversight Committee has not ruled out subpoenaing him and investigating him again. But essentially, a new photo emerged from the Department of Justice purporting to show Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick alongside Epstein and 3 other unidentified individuals. And in this photo that you can see, which I'm sure you might have seen floating online, it is just kind of hard to tell, but it looks like Howard Lutnick's like staring down. He's like moving over. He's like doing something like that. It should be Uncle House's teaching time. I agree with that, actually. Maybe we'll change it. And the other individuals aren't identified. But furthermore, so Thomas Massey, in light of this, he explicitly called for the DOJ to explain like why it was deleted, like why is it coming out now. But it's really exacerbated by the fact that, not like some interview way over there, but in an interview Howard Lutnick did in October of last year, he was very explicit. I think it was the New York Post. He was very explicit with the element that he only had, I think it was it like he very minimal connection, but he said he cut him off at like 2005. He was like, in 2005, I cut off all contact because, quote, he's gross, which, oh yeah, I know, no faith in that, and no faith in that when he said it as well. And it's not true at all, because what we found out here in some of these files is that his wife had communications with Epstein's secretary in like 2015. There was also communications happening in 2012. They were trying to coordinate. They're trying to coordinate like when they could come. Tea time. Where should I anchor my boat? So that was in 2012. 2015 is when the wife is talking about. I think about that one might have been 2015 actually was is when he gets invited to the fundraiser. Who's connected to who? Hillary Clinton, and the records did show as well, on top of that Howard Lutnick did also donate the max, which is $2,700 to Hillary Clinton. And that's kind of the gist of the story, that the pressure's mounting on Howard Lutnick. The calls for his resignation are increasing. I think it's very obvious Howard Lutnick has extreme connections here. And it can't be and it would be faulty to not mention this as well, because this may be even the bigger story with it, which is the way that he has essentially set up to the T. And Woe from Stonequire covered this greatly in a couple articles. Howard Lutnick essentially had set up to basically buy up on the prediction he was making that the tariffs would be refunded. And the way that he kind of set this up was with his sons and himself, to essentially buy back, pennies on the dollar, all this kind of these tariff refunds. And so the whole thing is just this kind of incestuous mess. Howard Lutnick's at the top of it, not the Epstein files, but just this mess in general of these recent revelations. And what you find in there is exploitation of just, basics of the financial system, more lying about Epstein, more another person from the administration having increased ties. And it can't be missed as well that Howard Lutnick was next door neighbors. I mean, their houses were connected. They shared a wall in Manhattan for years. But we're supposed to believe that Howard Lutnick magically just cut off all contacts, and he had nothing to do with it, despite everything else that says otherwise. And the whole thing with his sons is so. I mean, he should go to prison for that, quite frankly. I mean, and again, that's kind of it's a crazy argument to make, given the fact that they were literally just exploiting the laws that were available to them at the time. I think you could say there's an argument for morality, but no. And again, somebody who was donating to Hillary Clinton just a few years ago. Now he's in the Trump administration. Howard Lutnick's definitely our guy. No, it's just it's such a retarded argument to make. It's the same thing with JD Vance. If you as a 30-plus-year-old guy are never Trumping and was pro Hillary Clinton, okay, you're written off in my book. You're written off. There's not a world that would ever make me believe that you came to the conclusion, some years after that, especially as a man. As a woman, I understand. As a man, no way, dude. Something's wrong with you. You drink the water that turned the frogs gay. Also, peace out, vigilante. And Uncle Hal says, Lutnick bought the house from Epstein for $10. That's right. I forgot. It was on the low, right? Yeah, he bought the house from Epstein for $10, and they just stopped talking in 2005 because it just, he just thought it was gross. But Base Holiday, you had said something about the Patrick Casey. I can't find it. No, there it is. Base Holiday says, Atlas, I bring up Patrick Casey. Atlas, I bring up Patrick Casey because he criticizes Fishback. I grow weary of these smaller groups because they will be an eventual threat as we get older and take over positions of power. And that's the thing. That's what I see from him. I think there's literally no grounds to criticize Fishback on. And what did they attack him for? What did they say? He was an unserious candidate? No, that was Casey Push, right? Well, here's the thing. I'm pretty sure Patrick Casey came out and attacked Casey Push for going after Trump, for making the slightest point ever that Donald Trump's not releasing the Epstein files. I think that's a huge tell. And there's no argument to be made that you can defend the Trump administration right now. There's nothing we're getting from it. And anyone who does defend the Trump administration, to me, is worse than a leftist. Now, I'm not saying if that applies to Patrick Casey, then it does. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. But I do think that's a very easy heuristic. Do they currently support the Trump administration? I get the Vivek vibes. I get that he's suspect. But again, like I said earlier, who's in the race? There's really three main people in this Republican primary. Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins, who is, by all accounts, he pro-Zionist, pro-jury, loves Israel, please, let me touch the wall. All I want to do is touch the wall. Then you have Byron Donalds, right? Hey, I'm your token black Republican. Okay. And then you have James Fishback. What's the argument there? To not vote, or you need to vote for Byron Donalds, who took $45 million from the Adelsons in a war chest when it was uncontested? Give me a break. And I think we need to be better on having better ability to and I'm not saying to you, Base Holiday, in general, because I think there's a lot of these groups that are purely there for the grift, or are there because they're being paid to push sentiment that doesn't actually exist, trying to manipulate the actual organic sentiment that does exist. But I think that brings us up a wrap today. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. I appreciate the super chats greatly. Thank you guys very much. Again, you can support me if you don't want to help YouTube get money. You can support me at buymeacoffee.com/AtlasThugged. And there's a couple more people who did support there and donate there. I appreciate that greatly. That's massive, because it's just a better system in general than just the way that YouTube does things. I'm glad you guys enjoyed the video I put out yesterday. I'll be doing a bit more of that. I'm going to try to maintain that same style. I think a big perk for me now is that it feels like the video and my audio quality is actually in a place where I really appreciate it. And with that, because this is part of the reason, I actually went to cut up some of the older Offensively Accurates to put out clips, and the audio sounded like electronic. And so like that like kind of disheartened me. And so I wanted to really make, high quality content on top of that. I feel like I might be missing something. Also, no, just expect a bit more from the future sponsor coming up and being spoken about and being me shilling for them, if you will. But they've been great to work with. They've been nothing but nice to me. They've been very, very helpful. They are in the Discord as well too. I'm sure some of you are familiar with who it is. But it's, again, let me say this correctly. That it's from Ethanor or Ethanor. I'm assuming it's Ethanor. Ethanor Metallurgy. That's a tongue twister, brother. But again, things to really, really hone in on. Make sure you're staying in the Bible. Make sure that you are maintaining and trying to practice some level of stability, not blackpilling too hard. Maintain optimism, because if anything, your children deserve that at the bare minimum. Hope and faith. And beyond that, that's basically it. I feel like I had something I really wanted to say and I'm completely forgetting. Also, I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. I love seeing all of you in the chat. Smelly Balls, Ticks, Hippocratic, Caleb, Jason Smith, all you guys. It's always wonderful to see you guys. And group report is happening tomorrow. I don't know if I will be having or doing anything outside of that. I might get another video out, but I also might be working part-time at the old AI gig. We'll see. I'm gonna plan some stuff out as well. And I don't think anything else. There's something that's escaping my mind that I'm going to be really bothered that I didn't say. But regardless, Christ is King, as always. Deport Cash Patel, deport Pam Bondi. And if you are a woman over the weight of 120 pounds, you will be getting deported immediately. And if you are between 100 and 120 pounds, you are given 2-week notice to lose the weight or you're going to. Anyways, appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Stay strong. Have faith. Get smarter. Be better. Ascend. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care.
Get up and get out. Get out. Get out.
I have a question for you.
Say Christ is Lord. Say Christ is Lord. Say it. You say Christ is Lord. Get out! Get out! Christ is Lord!